The Dawn of the Hunt livestream reveal was this last Thursday, and we got a lot of information about the updates coming to PoE2 on April 4th. Here's the bingo sheet I made for it. As you can see, I didn't hit a bingo, and there are a few things that we're not getting that I expected to be in the update, like Druid and Bestiary. There are also quite a few things I wasn't expecting, and overall I'm pretty excited for it. Real quick, I just want to say that I've seen a lot of people online saying that they're underwhelmed with what we're getting for the update, and honestly I think it's kind of ridiculous. I get if you're looking forward to Druid or new acts and you're disappointed that we're not getting them yet, but to act like this isn't a huge update just seems delusional to me. Feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong in the comments. The stream was about 3 hours in total with the Q&A, so I can't really dig in too deep into everything shown because this video would easily be over an hour long, but I figured I'd go over the major changes and give some thoughts on them. One thing worth noting is that they mentioned that all of these updates will be coming to the existing league as well as a new league with a fresh economy. They explained that this was partially because this update doesn't necessarily live up to their standards for what a challenge league really is, and if there are players that want to use their current characters to play and check out the new content, they can do that. But with the number of changes coming to skills, balance, endgame, etc., that they really recommend starting fresh. They mentioned that this likely would not be the case with the next major update, which they're planning to have its own league mechanic that would only go into the new challenge league at that time, but they felt that it made sense for this one to bring it to the existing realms as well. So now let's get into some of the changes. First, we got a good look at the Huntress. I will definitely be creating Huntress as my first character this league, because I've been excited for it for a while and it looks like it'll be a lot of fun. The Huntress is designed around combos, getting in and out of combat, dealing both melee and ranged damage. Along with the spear, they're introducing bucklers which will generally be paired with a spear in the offhand and give the ability to parry attacks. Parrying allows you to counter enemy attacks, and a number of skills are designed to be used after a parry, enhancing their skill in some way. In the Q&A, they mentioned that the parry mechanic actually made them realize how bad shields are in comparison, which they're trying to get a change in for in the update as well. They said that this may not make it in time for the update, but can be expected in the near future if not. The Huntress also has the ability to tame wild beasts as companions to fight alongside you, and they will retain their modifiers when you do. The Huntress will have 2 ascendancies available to start, with the first being the Ritualist. The Ritualist is focused around animal sacrifice and plague. They also have a skill that adds a 3rd ring slot, and another that increases the effectiveness of rings and amulets. I have to imagine this means we'll be seeing a nerf to Ingenuity, otherwise it seems like that would be extremely broken. The other Huntress ascendancy we're getting is the Amazon. The Amazon is a more traditional fighter that has abilities that expose enemy weaknesses and increase your effectiveness by empowering your weapon and attacks, or defenses and recovery. I think both look pretty cool, but so far I'm leaning toward the Ritualist. They didn't show all of the ascendancy nodes in the reveal livestream, but they did release them in a press kit, so I'll put them on the screen now. I'm not going to go over every single skill, so feel free to pause the video if you want to take a better look at these. I'll be doing the same for the other new ascendancies we'll be getting for the existing classes. Speaking of, the first one we saw was the new warrior ascendancy, the Smith of Kitava. This ascendancy uses blacksmithing to empower weapons and or armor. One of the interesting things about this ascendancy is the Smith's Master ability. It's a free ascendancy node that limits your body armor to normal quality, but allows you to use your other ascendancy points to essentially craft your own body armor. There are nodes to increase maximum life, life per second, strength, and increases to all elemental resistances to name a few. It seems like a pretty big sacrifice to use your ascendancy points on, but it is an interesting concept. I'm not particularly drawn to the playstyle of warrior in general, so I probably won't be trying this one out, at least not right away, but I'm hoping it's good because the warrior has been in need of some love. The Mercenary will be getting the Tactician ascendancy, which seems to be mostly focused on buffing allies, minions, and totems. Out of all the new ascendancies, this one is probably the least I'm most interested in, to be honest. It just doesn't look that exciting to me, and I'm not a big fan of crossbows in general. In the Q&A, they did mention that the crossbows are getting buffed though, so maybe combined with that it won't be too bad. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The Witch is the other class we'll be getting a new ascendancy for, with the Lich. The Lich is designed around chaos and curses, becoming undead themselves, sacrificing life to enhance their energy shield. One of their ascendancy nodes allows you to slot an extra jewel that doubles its effects, but increases your mana cost by 50% if you have no energy shield. This looks like it could be a pretty fun ascendancy, and might be the second character that I create in this league. Outside of the spear skills coming, there are a few others we'll be getting with this update. One of them is Bind Spectre. This has been highly anticipated skill for minion enjoyers, which allows you to capture the spirit of a defeated monster to be summoned alongside you as your own minion. It works on almost any monster in the game, with different monsters costing a different amount of spirit depending on how powerful they are. You can only have one type of Spectre, but if you have enough spirit, you can summon multiple of them just like any other minion. In the Q&A, they mentioned that they've used the time between early access release and now to try and do a good round of testing and balancing on them, but they're sure that there'll be some broken monsters still, especially considering support gems work on them. It adds a ton of variety and potential for different minion builds, and should be a lot of fun to experiment with. I'll definitely be trying them out at some point. We also found out that they will be adding over 100 new support gems. They mentioned that a lot of builds didn't have many options and weren't supported well, and this should help alleviate that issue. We only got a peek at a few of them, but obviously with over 100 coming, there will be a ton of new options and potentially viable builds. Hopefully this leads to more variety in playstyles than we've seen so far. On that note, in the Q&A, they mentioned that when it comes to builds and power of skills and what's overpowered, you should take any existing knowledge and throw it out the window. Based on the way they spoke and the content that they've shown so far, it sounds like they want to smooth out the power curve so that you won't be able to take a couple key support gems or skills paired together and all of a sudden become godly, but rather that you have to earn that power. They said that literally every single skill will be changing in some way due to the changes that they're making with scaling, and their intent is to do it in a way that it brings down the excessive high end without making the skills bad or necessarily nerfing them too much for the more casual players. They specifically called out some of the overperformers like attribute stacking and spark, and they mentioned that the heralds will no longer trigger off of themselves. If you're running a powerful broken build, expect it getting nerfed into the ground. This will probably feel bad for some of the people that want to continue playing their existing characters, at least until they respec and adjust, but hopefully the overall balance will be better and it will still feel good for new characters and progression. This update also introduces over 100 new unique items. They showcased a handful of them and mentioned that there was a focus on mid and end game tiers to ensure that there are more exciting usable uniques for high level characters. Some of these look incredibly powerful, such as this one that gives you all 3 heralds, a ton of elemental resistance, and negates enemy resistances. Of course, with the herald nerfs, who knows how good it will actually end up being, but it definitely looks powerful at a glance. Supposedly, the reason there were so many less desirable uniques at launch is because when they were designing uniques, they started with the lower end and worked their way up, and underestimated the amount of time it would take to get through them. They also mentioned their goal over time is to have at least one non-boss unique for every single base item in the game so you can chance orb any base. While we're not getting a crafting bench, which they doubled down on in the Q&A by the way, we are getting more crafting options, and they specifically said they intend to significantly increase the number and variety of socketable items for crafting over time. They stressed that they don't want it to get to a point where ground loot isn't important or exciting, which they feel like PoE1 kinda got to. It sounds like they are basically aiming to give us the crafting bench, just through socketables like runes instead, since those can be added to almost all items. They mentioned that runes will now have tiers, so you can get higher level of modifiers, and a number of more specialized socketables are being added as well. They also mentioned that their general intention is to add some crafting with pretty much every league moving forward. A new crafting mechanic we're getting this time is recombination. Recombination allows you to take 2 items and try to merge certain affixes from both items into a single one. In the Q&A, they mentioned that how this works is actually going to be a little bit different than how it's shown in the video, and that it's still being finalized this week leading up to the release, but they said they wanted to make it a little bit more deterministic so you will be able to choose which affixes you are aiming for, and then depending on the number of affixes you choose and how powerful they are, you will have a certain percentage chance to succeed or fail. If you fail, you will lose both items. This is tied in with the expedition mechanic and will take artifacts to use. They mentioned that it should cost roughly about the same amount of artifacts that you would get from completing one expedition encounter. There's also a new system being introduced called Azmerian Wisps, which will show up in maps throughout both the campaign and endgame. These wisps will continually flee from you, and when they come into contact with enemies will empower them. Different wisps empower enemies in different ways. Eventually, the wisp will find and possess a rare or unique monster, granting them new powers, and when slain they will drop rewards, increased by the number of monsters empowered along the way. The wisps also drop a new set of socketable items, allowing you to craft a number of new interesting modifiers to a specific item slot. Most maps will have a chance to contain Azmerian wisps, but there is also a new endgame map that will always have multiple. And there are also new Atlas nodes specifically for them, and new tablet modifiers. Another new endgame map that looked really cool to me is one that's essentially a boss rush map. You activate these stone monoliths throughout the map, and once they are all activated, you can summon a boss. Then once it's defeated, you can summon another. Over and over, up to 10 waves, getting incrementally more difficult. These bosses also drop new runes that are exclusive to this map encounter. One of the new maps we're getting duplicates rares so that you'll constantly be fighting two of the same rare at the same time. If you complete it, you will be rewarded with a new type of ring or amulet, which has a special modifier to increase the number of prefixes or suffixes the item can have at the cost of the other. We also saw a new map based around the essence mechanic. This is one that we saw a small teaser from before the reveal. The map will contain a powerful boss imprisoned in the center, surrounded by a number of monsters also imprisoned in essences. Defeating the surrounding monsters will increase your potential rewards for killing the boss, but it will also make him stronger. With this, there are 4 new powerful essences available, and they mentioned that in general, greater essences will be quite a bit more common than they previously had been. In the Q&A, they said the same about omens actually, saying they are about 2.5 times more common than they previously were, and that you will be guaranteed at least 1 per ritual now. They mentioned that there are 8 of these new maps, each with their own special encounters. The Atlas tree has also been updated so that instead of 30 points, you can now acquire 40, 10 of which come from completing 5 different unique maps. In the Q&A, they said that these should be more common than the unique maps previously were, so you should come across them fairly often, and that each unique map belongs to specific biomes, so you'll be able to sort of hunt them down in that way. They didn't show us all 8, only the ones I mentioned here, but I thought that those all looked pretty cool, and I'm glad to see that they are giving us more options for crafting. They said that with Dawn of the Hunt there was a focus on increasing the number of interesting encounters and things to do, and a need to smooth out the progression through maps and reduce the amount of annoying busywork. For anyone that spent a lot of time in Endgame, this is probably music to your ears. One of the new encounters that they're adding is Rogue Exiles, which have a chance to spawn on any map you run. Rogue Exiles are essentially player-like enemies that use player skills and wear gear just like a normal player would, and they are programmed to act more like normal players and designed to feel like a PvP battle. When you defeat Rogue Exiles, they drop all items that they are wearing, including uniques, which can be seen under their health bar. In the Q&A, they mentioned that each item that the Rogue Exiles are wearing is a random roll, so it's technically possible, though very rare, that you could find one wearing unique items in every single slot, and you would get every one of them if you defeat them. I think these look really cool and fun, and I can't wait to come across them in-game. It's also worth noting that Rogue Exiles was actually a league mechanic in PoE1 that they sort of reworked for PoE2. And in the Q&A, Jonathan mentioned that their hope in the long term, once they're through early access, is that each time they do a brand new league mechanic, that they could also potentially bring back something from PoE1. He stated that there are some that they don't necessarily want to bring back, but that could always change if they reimagine it and come up with a good idea for it. This update also introduces some new unique strongboxes which can randomly show up in your maps, each having their own special encounters. Strongboxes kinda sucked before, so hopefully this will make them a little bit more exciting. The next thing they talked about was the introduction to Endgame. Previously we had a quest to complete 10 tier 1 maps to get your first 2 Atlas skill points, and then you'd get one to complete 10 tier 2 maps, so on and so forth. That has been replaced with a system to make acquiring Atlas points and increasing your map tier much more interesting. You'll be tasked with tracking down a corrupted nexus, which can be found in the corrupted areas on the Atlas. Corrupted maps surrounding the nexus will have new modifiers, contain powerful corrupted enemies, and be more rewarding than before. Completing the corrupted nexus will give you 2 points for your Atlas skill tree and will clear the surrounding corruption, turning any previously corrupted map into a cleansed map. Cleansed maps have new cleansed monsters, a new boss, and their own set of modifiers and rewards, including a new crafting item, Fracturing Orbs. Fracturing Orbs can be used on rare items with at least 4 modifiers, and can lock one of those modifiers in place so that it can't be changed no matter what other crafting items you use on it. In the Q&A, they specified that the boss in a cleansed map will be guaranteed to drop a Fracturing Orb, and that cleansed monsters can't drop equipment but will drop more currency. So if you want more currency, then you should run cleansed maps, with the trade-off being that you'll get less equipment, and can't get the uniques that are specific to corrupted bosses. I think this will end up being a much more fun quest to go through the endgame, and I like the idea of being able to choose if you want to run corrupted maps for more equipment, or if you'd rather cleanse them first for more currency. We're also getting pretty big updates to towers to make them much less of a chore and more interesting. Towers will now be less common, having about a third as many as before, but will also be more powerful and affect more maps in a larger area. Tablets by default will add mechanics to twice as many maps as before, but running the tower at higher tiers will increase that even further, with the tier 15 doubling it to 4 times as many maps as before. We also will be able to place up to 3 tablets in each tower, with the number depending on the number of modifiers on the waystone that you ran the tower with. Completing it by default will give you 1 slot, running it with at least 3 modifiers will give you 2, and running it with 6 will give you 3. They're also adding unique tablets, including one that allows you to run any map within the tower's range without even having any of the connected completed maps. And as they mentioned before the update, the towers will have full map mechanics and objectives now, and each tower will also be getting its own unique map boss. Overall, I think these are great updates for towers, and the system as a whole should be much more fun. They've also found a compromise for the 1 vs 6 portals and losing maps when you die. They said that they still want it to feel important that you don't die in the late endgame, but that it was a bit harsh of a step from the campaign where you could constantly respawn to learn how to tackle something, and now it seems like when starting out in maps we'll have 6 portals and you can respawn and return to the map. But the more modifiers your waystone has, the less portals or deaths that you'll have. With 6 modifiers you'll only have 1. This is something they mentioned in the Q&A that they're still trying to figure out the best way to handle, since only having 1 portal would mean that you can only get 1 inventory of loot, even if you don't die. I'm personally hoping that they can change it to just keep the 6 portals, but also keep track of your deaths. And when you've exceeded the allowed number of deaths, then it fails the map and closes any remaining portals. I think this would be a great solution. On a similar note, they brought up the fact that the current system incentivizes players to hold off on attempting pinnacle content until a level up, because the experience penalty can be so brutal. So now you can no longer lose or gain experience from pinnacle content. I think that this is a great change. I definitely found myself waiting to level up every single time that I wanted to try a new or harder difficulty pinnacle. In the Q&A, they also mentioned that alongside those balance updates, they reduced the amount of health that the difficulty 0 pinnacles have. Difficulty 4 is staying about the same, but they wanted a lower barrier of entry for difficulty 0. In the reveal itself, they didn't really mention balancing at all, but it was touched on quite a bit in the Q&A, and it sounds like that's a big focus of theirs now and moving forward, and I think the patch notes next week will be massive because of this. Jonathan specifically said that it will feel like a bit of a nerf fest, but the goal is to bring everything closer together and get to a point where you don't have a few builds dominating that a majority of players are drawn to, but a more even split of classes and builds. And they want it to be so that when you first attempt a pinnacle boss, you shouldn't destroy it in seconds. It should be a bit of a fight and that eventually you can get to that point, but it should take some effort to get there. I think that this is a great thing to aim for, but even they admitted that they're sure that there will be broken, overpowered builds this time around as well, but that it should decrease over time, getting better with each update, and will hopefully be in a much more balanced spot by full release. One last thing I want to mention from the Q&A is a couple of quality of life upcoming things that they mentioned that they're working on that probably won't be ready for 0.2, but we can expect soon. And one of them is the rune affinity and potential for rune stash tabs, and then also some sort of bookmarking system for the Atlas, which should make it much easier to navigate. These both sound like great additions to me, and hopefully they'll get them in relatively soon. I think that about covers it. There were some other things mentioned in the stream, but like I said, the stream lasted about 3 hours and this video is already getting kinda long. Overall, I'm happy with what we're getting and super excited to check it all out next Friday. What do you think though? Did it meet your expectations? Were you impressed or disappointed? And are you excited for the release? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to toss it a like or subscribe to the channel. Helps me out a ton and is greatly appreciated. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.